I don't have enough money. I shouldn't be talking to a planner. I don't have enough assets. I'm not worth their time. Whatever the case might be, please, if that's ever gone through your mind, get that out. Get in and see a professional who can do exactly what you were talking about. Get that planning done. Try to find the things that can go wrong. Figure out a way to deal with those in advance so we're not reacting to a problem.
And so when it comes to, once again, mistakes that we see DIYers make, it's because they're focused on one thing and they ignore everything else, or they don't even know everything else to even think about, because they've always been told for so many years that I need to be debt-free in retirement, or I need to generate retirement income, right? And those things are true in their silos, right? But you can't only focus on those things to your own. Thanks for joining us. Another edition of Retirement Planning Happy Hour. Eric Douglas, Chris Vaughn, Family Wealth Planning Partners. You know who we are if you've checked out this channel before. So we got another interesting show today.
Yeah,
and I think we've alluded to this before, and I think we've kind of decided this is going to be a regular feature.
Yeah.
In
unfortunately, it's going to be a regular feature,
well,
right?
Unfortunately, but we always, what do we want to do when you make mistakes is you want to learn.
You want to learn from them, right?
So this is going to be a pretty regular feature, I think, going forward, which is mistakes that we see from DIYers.
Yep.
And this isn't to shame anybody. This is not to make anybody feel bad. This isn't to highlight, how stupid people are. That's not what this is. These are for the most part bright, intelligent people, but they don't know what they don't know. And usually, by the time they come into one of our offices, some of these mistakes, we try to fix them as best we possibly can. But sometimes the damage is done, and there's not really much that we can do. And of course, we all feel bad when that happens, but it's important for us to maybe take some of those opportunities and treat them as opportunities,
as education for people,
as
right?
educational,
Yeah, exactly.
Opportunities, and share with our listeners and viewers some of the things you should not be doing. And really, most of these mistakes aren't necessarily too terribly blatant in the moment that they make them. But I think one of the themes you'll see through some of these stories is that you don't even realize they're a mistake until much, much later.
Right.
Or, if you had done something preventative in advance, you could have prevented something.
And when you say much, much later, we're talking years or in some cases decades later before you realize the implications of that mistake.
For sure. So with that being said,
let's talk a little bourbon.
Well, what do we got here with us?
So what we have today, this is Ezra Brooks. This is their cask strength. So this is a barrel pick of the Ezra Brooks 99 that you see out there. It is a 7-year-old bourbon, although it does not say that anywhere on the bottle. Usually there's an age statement. They normally proof this to 99, but for the barrel picks, and this was picked up at Liquor Barn number 7 here in Louisville.
That's what I was just looking at, yeah.
They actually proof it up to 120, so this one's it's getting up there. I have had this many times. I picked this for a very specific reason because I wanted to see what you thought, and then we'll talk about what we're really dealing with, right? I did fail to bring in a little pipette or dropper, whatever you call it today. So we have a group that was affected by the tornado this past spring that is sharing our office right now called Element 502. A little shout out to them because they supplied us with a little beaker that we can use to put some water in. They are currently doing a rebranding for us as we prepare to move into our new office. So just a shout out to Element 502. They do fantastic work with branding and advertising.
Well, you just did a couple foreshadowing things right there just out of the blue.
I teed up a whole bunch of stuff, right?
So don't know what to follow up on first, but yes, there's a little bit of a rebranding going on, and we are moving into a new office space. I don't think we've officially mentioned that. So come the beginning of 2026, we will be having a lot of updates.
Yeah, our podcasting studio is going to change. We're going to make some pretty radical improvements on that, and love for people to come in and see it when that happens. We will we'll keep everybody posted.
Yep. So teaser, if you will.
Little teaser for you. Okay, so do you want to kind of talk about what this is first? Ezra Brooks is a Lux Row product down in Bardstown. I want to kind of get your feedback a little bit, and then we'll start talking.
So it doesn't taste that hot.
It doesn't taste like 120 proof. I totally
for
120,
agree with that. I'm not really having any kind of an aftertaste, really. It goes down pretty smooth.
All right. Well, one of the things that Ezra Brooks prides themselves on is this is charcoal filtered. like you would expect Tennessee whiskeys, the Jack Daniels and the things like that. Those are charcoal filtered, which is bourbon normally is not. But that's kind of their thing. There is nothing gimmicky about this. We talked about this last week. If they lead with a story,
you don't need
or
a gimmick,
if it's sponsored by a big brand name or a rock star or something like that, usually it's bad. This is old school Kentucky bourbon. The one thing they do to kind of make themselves stand out is they do that charcoal filtering. But what's really neat about this is take a guess how much that costs.
I don't have a clue. I know I've had Ezra Brooks in the past, but it's been so long. I don't even know if it was cask strength that I had.
Okay, so this is cask strength
Yeah.
barrel pick. So this is going to be one of the more expensive ones. I bought this morning for $52.99 retail, and they had plenty. And I could have gone to any number of different stores and got it at basically the same price, readily available. It would have been a different pick if I'd have gone somewhere else. These are readily available, at least here in the Louisville metro. I suspect if you went to Wisconsin or Montana or something like that, probably not so much. But this one's easy to get, and you're not going to break the bank on this bottle.
It's a good bottle at $50.
At $52, that's a fantastic pour.
It's a little dangerous though at 120 because that doesn't taste like 120.
No, it doesn't. And I think that's the charcoal filtering that's doing that. So,
a little bit of an aftertaste on the back of my palate, but nothing down the throat.
And there's no fancy taste in here. This is just old-fashioned bourbon. It's oak and caramel and maybe a little vanilla. It's simple. It's flavorful. It's really enjoyable.
It's awesome. Yeah, very good.
And when you find out what the price is, it's that much more enjoyable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
for sure.
All right, we'll keep working on this and kind of experimenting with water and stuff like that while we talk. So, which story do we want to start with today?
Well, you had a couple, and then I can intersperse with some of mine. But we just in the last week, the reason we're doing this is because in the last week we seem to have just been inundated with stories that we're just now learning about, either from friends of friends or new prospects that have come in the door, or just things we've heard about secondhand. So, it's always interesting. We always hear so many stories because we're in the business, and you have friends and families that, this happened to my my aunt, my uncle, or so and so, right? And so you hear a lot about these stories secondhand, and the end result is always, they probably should have been more proactive in doing some planning, and that's going to be the theme for today. For sure. So
I'm going to start with one. This was literally last night. This client came in. This is a sad story. So I'm going to start with this one so that we can have a little bit more positive news later on. This was a gentleman came in. He went to a workshop that we did about estate planning, 6 weeks ago, something like that. He came in and he said, I came in because I need a trust. Okay, slow your roll for a minute. Let's figure out what you're trying to accomplish. And then we'll determine whether you need a trust or not, what type of trust, stuff like that. Then we'll get an attorney involved, and they're, of course, going to give us their opinion, and we'll move on from there. I said, okay, so talk to me about what's happening. And this is when it got sad. He said, he had filled out a little information gatherer that we gave to him about types of investments that he's got. He said, my wife and I both have pensions. They're small, and he had the amounts written down. We both have Social Security. They did file for Social Security at 62, earliest as they possibly could, so they've got the smallest amount that they could get. They had a 401k at one point in time. They had spent money out of the 401k in order to pay off their house. That's key to this conversation, right? So, okay, great. The house is paid off. How much money is left in the 401k? $741. Not $741,000. $741.
There's only so much compounding during a retirement.
$741 is not going to do much. I don't care what the investment is.
That's a good day at Sam's Club for me. These days, so.
Yeah, I've got teenage boys, so that's a grocery trip. So, okay, they've got enough income coming in that they're living the lifestyle that they want. Yeah, inflation's going to start catching up to those pensions eventually. They don't have any debt, so I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, where are we going with this? I'm missing something. Yep. And I said, okay, what else is going on? And he said, well, my wife has Alzheimer's. And we figure at the very most 2 years before she is in a nursing home. And that's when it's like, oh, wow. Okay, because now I see what's coming on here. So, yeah, I won't go through all the details, but what he was trying to do is he was trying to protect his house from Medicaid spend down. Okay, that's a legitimate thing. That's common. We talk about that all the time. The issue is, number one, we're just now getting around to this conversation, but his wife is already sick, and she is still mentally okay, was the phrase that he used. But obviously, Alzheimer's progresses at different rates in everybody. 10 years from now, she might still be okay. She might not
easily
be with us in a year. I mean, it's just no telling with that disease. And I wouldn't wish that disease on my worst enemy. That is just
and when
a
you say
true
early
nightmare.
and we say early onset, I mean, it could truly be early onset, or by the time they actually identify or get a diagnosis, it's
exactly.
maybe not as early anymore.
And it just, when it comes to how long things last, there's two famous people that pop into my head that had Alzheimer's, dementia kind of thing. Ronald Reagan was one of them. Ronald Reagan, after they admitted that he had it, he was sick for 10 years before he died. Now, granted, former president's going to get the best medical care, okay? But think about Pat Summitt, the women's coach at the University of Tennessee. Right, yeah. She had the same thing. She's going to get the best medical care that there is. I don't think she made it 2 years after the diagnosis. So everybody's different, and that's the problem. We just don't know where we're getting into. Okay, so remember that in order to protect assets by putting them into an irrevocable trust, which is what he was looking for, in order to get that protection, it's got to be inside of that trust for 5 years. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, as I understand it, I'm probably going to screw this up. There are some workarounds to that a little bit, but you're still going to have to make some sacrifices. It's not good, right? Well, he's saying within 2 years, she's there. They have absolutely no assets whatsoever to pay for that medical care. They don't have a long-term care insurance plan or anything like that. So I said, you're trying to protect the house from the spin down, but correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to have to sell the house in order to pay for her care. Otherwise, you're getting literally whatever Medicaid will pay for, which is, you don't want that. And he said, correct. So we went through multiple scenarios that he could do. He could go ahead and sell the house, in which case do you actually need the trust to protect it because you're spending the money now. He could sell the house and downsize, but there's no good situation here. And I can let your minds wander. I had to have a conversation with a guy who is he's recognizing he's about to lose his wife. Mm-hmm. Their adult daughter got here a little late, but she came in, and I'm now having the same conversation with her, and she's roughly my age, I'd guess. It's choosing the lesser of 10 different evils. There's no good outcome here because they didn't do the proper planning. If they had been working with a good planner, most likely we would have recognized, okay, what do we do if? Do we actually want to take the money out of that 401k and pay off the house? Remember, if you pay off your house early, that's great. But the only way to get money back out of it is to borrow money.
Your house doesn't pay you.
Right. Your house is not an ATM. You got to go through the process of borrowing money. Well, now you're back in debt. So why is it that you're hurrying to pay off that debt if there's nothing left afterwards? And that was one of the big mistakes.
And if the money came from a 401k, mm-hmm. they had to pay taxes.
And probably at a much higher rate than what they would have if they'd have done it correctly.
Yeah, but what they did was they followed conventional wisdom, pay off your house before you get into retirement,
Correct.
And everything's going to be great. Not always.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's why you can't always pay attention to too much conventional wisdom mm-hmm. or listen to your friends and neighbors that tell you, yeah, you need to have all your debt paid off before you get into retirement. That is so 100% not true. We have so many clients that still carry a mortgage or some level of debt. As long as you can manage that debt within the confines of your income.
As long as it's built into the income plan. That's exactly right.
Exactly right. So as long as you account for it, and obviously we're never telling anyone to not be responsible with debt.
No, of course not.
Of course, but you can plan for it.
Yeah.
It's okay, especially with, I'm going to guess, I have no idea, then maybe you guys didn't talk about this, but the mortgage rate that they probably paid down was probably significantly lower than what rates are today.
Oh, I'm sure it was. We didn't go down that road, but
yeah.
Without question, paying off the mortgage aggressively when they only really had one savings vehicle, and that would have been the 401k, mm-hmm. was probably not the right call. It's certainly coming back to bite them now because there's no assets available to them. But there's other mistakes in here too. They took Social Security at 62, both of them, mm-hmm. right? Oh my goodness, we're eligible. We can take our pensions now. Let's Let's kick bait and get out of here. Well, that's fine if you've got enough savings to provide for the lifestyle and for the bad things that are going to happen. One of the things that we talk about when we're developing those income plans for people, after we've got it built out, it all works. The numbers are good. Everybody's happy. Now, what things can go wrong that would cause this to fail? And one of them is, what if there's a major illness like an Alzheimer's or something like that? How do we pay for that and not destroy the plan? Or can the plan pay for it and still have money left over? It's different with every couple or person. But that was the problem here. There was no plan. And now, unfortunately, it's going to bite them. And I hate those conversations.
Good intentions.
Yeah, the intentions were good.
Best of intentions, live a debt-free lifestyle. I love it, right? And you hear a lot about it until it doesn't necessarily work for you. And they were probably getting fine. They were getting through retirement just fine until, obviously, this major life event happened. And most people, and this is just obviously kind of a bigger point, right? Most people think about their retirement kind of in their maybe late 60s, in their 70s, when they're still kind of maybe traveling and doing some of the bucket list stuff. A lot of people don't have the foresight, and this is human nature. Whoever wants to think about 20 years in the future, about all the bad stuff that could happen in 20 years. But you don't think about getting Alzheimer's in your 80s, right? That's just not something that's really on your radar when you're 62 and filing for Social Security.
And although I did not ask, it wasn't necessary in this case, just looking at this gentleman, he wasn't in his 80s. I'm going to guess he was in his probably mid-70s. So, to your point, okay, so now we go through this horrific situation. Alzheimer's, we don't know how long it's going to take, but I don't know that anybody survives Alzheimer's. I don't know that exists.
Well, nobody survives.
Yeah, exactly.
there is 100% death rate, right?
So, eventually she's going to be gone. He will have spent, in theory, it depends on how long she lives. In theory, he will have spent not only, all of their investments because they don't have anything, but he also will have spent his house. And now he has to go on living. So I can tell you that we've discussed this many times. I love what I do. Yeah. This is absolutely fun. It's very rewarding. Yesterday was not one of those days because I'm literally having to tell somebody, you got to pick which is the worst door because they're all bad and you got to go through one of them. Not a fun night.
Well, and what makes it difficult, and this is clearly you would not have said this to these clients, but you're sitting there listening to some of these stories, and we've all had meetings like this sometimes where it's just there's not a whole necessarily a lot we can do, but in your mind the entire time you're sitting here thinking, what if you had been in here 5 years, 10 years ago?
Exactly.
And had some of these conversations and been proactive and not reactive in your financial planning. Because that's usually one of the biggest issues with, when you have these DIY mistakes is because when you finally do decide to do some planning, you're being reactive to an event that's already happened instead of being proactive and preparing and planning for what could potentially happen in the future. And if one of those bad eventualities does occur, you're set. You already have a plan in place and you kind of know how to tackle it.
I totally agree. And while you were talking about that, I thought, there's two reasons that I can think of why you would want to do a DIY financial plan, why you want to DIY your retirement. One is that you're trying to save fees. We've had that discussion before. Any good professional is going to earn their money time and time again, right? Just the amount of money that you save or the amount of increase that you get is going to easily pay for the fee of your financial advisor, a good one, or your attorney or your accountant, so on and so forth, right? So I think we've debunked that one. But the other one is there's too many people out there who say, I don't have enough money. I shouldn't be talking to a planner. I don't have enough assets. I'm not worth their time. Whatever the case might be, please, if that's ever gone through your mind, get that out. Get in and see a professional who can do exactly what you were talking about. Get that planning done. Try to find the things that can go wrong. Figure out a way to deal with those in advance so we're not reacting to a problem.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've had 2 meetings in the last month that they started off with that exact same sentence. I don't think I have enough to even be here. am I worth your time? And of course, yes, we're going to talk.
Of course.
We're going to talk to everybody, right? And we're going to help as many people as we possibly can. But it's interesting. There is a defeatist mindset sometimes that you see a lot with individuals, and they preclude them, or they avoid getting help because they've already got a defeatist mindset saying that I'm not worthy of help.
Right.
That's basically what they're saying. I don't have enough money. I'm not worthy of help. That's not true, right?
Yeah. Get that out of your head.
Yeah.
You are worthy of help.
Yeah.
Period.
So this is a somewhat similar story. Not quite the same, but met with someone recently, an individual who, worked, had her whole, worked all her life and saved money and did an okay job of saving. She was single, never married, but she had a pension and she had Social Security. And so she had two forms of income, which covered most of her needs. And her pension was actually bigger than her Social Security. It was a corporate pension.
Right.
I don't think anybody at that company still has one. But, she had retired, let's say a decade ago, give or take. But when she retired, she took all of her 401k. And instead of paying off her house, she did not do that. But what she did do was she took all of her 401k and put it into an income annuity. Because she was so focused on income.
Yep.
And she wanted to provide income in her retirement that she put all of the entirety of her 401k, everything that she had in savings outside of a little bit of money in the bank, right? Everything went into that income annuity. And of course it was, and anybody in our business can probably guess which income annuity it went into, but it was a bonus 10-year annuity.
Oh,
turned on the incomes, right? So, there's no getting out of it. There's nothing you can do. There is a death benefit, but the death benefit's going to dwindle significantly every time that she takes a payment every month, which she is. Obviously she's receiving monthly distributions, but what sold her was there was a kicker in there for long-term care. There was a nursing home kicker. Now there's all kinds of parameters around it, and it doesn't just turn on. But in her mind, that was what sold her. Like, if something were to happen to me and I went into some type of a home, I can turn on the income, or I can turn on this kicker that's included on this annuity. Which those are okay, but they're not nearly as great as they're made to sound when they are sold. Right? It's gonna give you a little bit of income, and you're gonna draw against that death benefit a little bit, but it's not going to pay for everything. But she was so focused on one thing. She was focused on income and retirement. And I hate that our business does this, but if you go online, and this is a DIY thing, right? She did this herself. She went online, and how do you prepare for retirement? And I need to generate retirement income. That's what everyone's focused on, is how do you generate retirement income? Well, you generate retirement income by taking a distribution from your accounts. It's that simple. There's all kinds of different. Right. There's all kinds of other ways to do it too, but everyone. Another one I hear all the time is, "I want to go buy a piece of property because I can generate passive income." Whether or not it's passive is another. We did
a podcast on that,
right? And that's another story. But I want to own a home because it's going to generate income, and it's an income stream that I can, that I'm not going to outlive. Okay, that's great. What if your renters leave? Income's gone, right? Your house, I just said this earlier, that house is not going to pay you. Well, in this case, with her annuity, she will receive income for the rest of her life, but there's no inflation protection. And she's also finding out as she's into her closing in on her mid 70s, and she's starting to think a little bit more closely about long-term care because she's not married. And what are the things that I need to do to prepare for possibly having to pay for all of this myself?
Right.
There's only one thing she can really go after, and that's her house. That's the only asset that she has. And so she would have to obviously.
Sounds familiar.
She would have to say, and she doesn't own it free and clear like the couple that you were talking about, because it's not paid off. So she does have she has a decent amount of equity, but it's not going to be enough to fund a long stay in a nursing home. That's for sure. So it just goes back to the mindset of, in your case, they were so focused on paying off their house, right? That they had a singular focus, they had a singular goal of going into retirement debt free, and they did that, and they solved that problem. But that created other problems. Yep. In this case, the lady that I'm referring to, she was focused on income. She wanted income. She solved her income problem between her Social Security, between her pension, and between her annuity income stream. Her income needs are met, but there's no inflation protection.
Yeah, her income meets her net. or now.
At the time that she turned them on.
But what are they 10, 15, 20 years from now? And we've had that discussion. If you look at historically, when we're talking about inflation, we're not talking about what has happened from 2021 through 2024. We're talking historical inflation rates. Every 24 years, the price of everything that you buy doubles, right? Well, if you're taking that immediate income or that income annuity and you're turning that on in your, say, early 60s,
yep.
and you live a normal life expectancy, everything that you buy is going to double during your lifetime. But if you've got no inflation protection, that means that effectively your income is cut in half. That's yep. what that means, and that's a horrible way to live. I'm sorry.
So but yes, she solved for that problem. Mm-hmm. She created an income stream that she was not going to outlive, and she felt good about it at the time. But now that's going to lead to other issues and other complications because she was so singularly focused on that one problem that she created new ones.
Yep.
And so when it comes to, once again, mistakes that we see DIYers make, it's because they're focused on one thing and they ignore everything else, or they don't even know everything else to even think about. Because they've always been told for so many years that I need to be debt-free in retirement, or I need right. to generate retirement income, right? And those things are true in their silos, right? But you can't only focus on those things to your own debt.
You can't think about anything when it comes to finances in a bubble.
Yep.
Right? You can't. And you know, I'm going to probably pound on this a little bit more. I know you are too. We're not saying it's a bad thing to be debt-free before you retire. It's a good thing if you have resources to pay for the things that you want. If you have steady flows of income that protect against inflation risk, things other than selling your house. If the only asset that you have, you're debt-free, but the only asset you've got is your house, you go back into that story that the guy that I was talking about. If something bad happens, you are absolutely screwed. There's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm. So you had another.
I got another one now. This one, I'm going to change a little bit of the story, just a little bit, because one of the people involved in this story is a regular listener. He told me that, so he knows who he is. So this is one of those where what you've got is you've got an older parent who is highly intelligent. Right? You know the type. But what we have a tendency to do, and baby boomers, we've talked about this before, y'all are bad, and the generations before you are worse.
You
don't discuss money with your family. Yeah. Okay, you know what? We talked a few weeks ago, we talked about how we learn about money, right? Well, we don't talk to our kids about money because we don't want them to know what we've got. Okay, my kids don't know what I've got, but we have been teaching them about money. But we're not talking about teenagers here, or middle school kids. We're talking about adults who are 40s, 50s, maybe even 60 years old. I think you can let them in on what's going on. They might see some things. And quite frankly, older people have a bullseye on them for people trying to take advantage of them.
Uh-huh.
And, I'm going to pick on my dad a minute because he never listens to the show.
You're also cluing into my next story, too.
Okay, so
but go ahead.
You have a bullseye on you, and you can be like my dad and say, they're never going to get to me. I know better. These people are really, really good at convincing you to do something that they want you to do. They've already honed the craft. It's no different than a comedian who has practiced the joke. He knows how to tell the joke to get the biggest laugh because he's practiced. These shysters that are out there are no different. They've honed this skill. So don't think you're immune to this kind of stuff just because you're smart.
Well, it's not even the fact that it's just maybe one individual that was really good at being a salesman, right? It's the fact that you're inundated with mail.
Oh my gosh, constantly.
You're inundated with email. You're inundated with mail. You get calls. You get cold calls constantly when you hit 65, and so it's people.
Oh, they don't wait till 65. I'm getting them already.
Yeah. So, but you're constantly targeted, and you're constantly hearing about all the bad things that could potentially happen to you that you need to protect yourself from. That at some point that becomes an inner monologue in your head that you need to solve for.
Yep.
and so at some point you're going to take the call.
Yep,
and you're going to listen. And because you've been getting so much, I don't know what other word to use, but propaganda. Yeah. You've been getting so much propaganda in the mail, and you've been getting fed all of these horror stories about all of the bad things that you need to protect yourself from, that you become more susceptible to the one person who's really, really good at their job.
Really good,
that can sound really good and is good at sales, right? And you become more susceptible, and then you make a mistake that you can't recover from.
That's right. So anyway, back to our story. In this particular case, older parent did not, highly intelligent, did not discuss with adult children what they should do in certain circumstances. So let me kind of lay the groundwork out. There is a pension and Social Security. This is a widow situation. There's a pension and Social Security that more than provide the income that she need with room to spare. Okay. The only thing that she uses her investments for is literally buying gifts for family and going on vacations with family. So this is money that's not necessary. I even asked the question, if we took every investment that you've got and we burned it down, would you be okay? And yeah, month to month, we'd be fine, right? Okay, great. Good situation. So we've got regular investments. We've got brokerage. We've got IRA money. We also have a couple of annuities that were written back in the 2000s, right? One of them was, I think, 2006. The other one was like 2009, 2010.
Those are
which we've had that discussion.
Well, those are going to look dramatically different than anything else.
Yes, they are, because the kind of products that were being sold back then are not necessarily the same as what's out there now. Okay, so the issue with these annuities is this, right? One of them, the one that was taken out in 2010, is an income annuity, and they turned the income on. Okay. Now remember, we don't need any of this money.
Yeah.
We could set it on fire and her life is fine. She just wouldn't have as much money for vacation. Right. But they turned the income on. Now it's coming out. Mm-hmm. And what people don't realize, they thought that this annuity was worth a whole lot more than what it actually is when I started looking at statements. There's what's called a guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit on this. And I know you know what I'm talking about. It's basically, if you turn this income on, you're going to be guaranteed this amount of money every month or every year for as long as you live. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if you live 1 year or 100 years, you're going to keep getting this, right? However, the annuity will eventually not have any value left to it. It'll go away. Yep. So if you live lesser than the period of time that it goes away, then whatever's left is a death benefit to your heirs. If you live longer than that, then the money is gone. There's no benefit when you're gone, but you keep getting the income, and that sounds great, and it can be. But she's taking this income, and she's been taking it since 2010, but she doesn't need the money. Now there's not very much left in it. If she wanted to just say move the money out, there's no penalties. We're way out of that. If she wanted to move the money out into a brokerage, we could invest it differently because, by the way, the cap rate on this one, 2%. She cannot improve her situation by more than 2% per year to make it grow so that there's something left, right? Which is what she wants.
Protection comes at a cost, guys.
That's right.
Yep.
So that's the first one. That one wouldn't be that bad. It really wouldn't. We're at a position now where, I was having the conversation with him. I said, we can take all this money out. You'll lose that guaranteed income if you do. But you don't need it. But if we take it out, you're not going to get as much as you think you are. Well, how much am I going to get? I just looked at a statement. It's very clear. They were aghast. Oh, my gosh, it's that low? Yeah, because that's what it's designed to do. Now, tell me how much longer you're going to live, and I'll tell you mathematically whether you should take this money out or not.
Well, it's also important to note on those income annuities, when you take an income, you're not just taking the income, you're also paying fees for the rider.
Correct.
In perpetuity. So the fees on the annuity don't go away because you've turned on the rider.
Correct.
So not only is the income that you're receiving each month being withdrawn, but the fees are also being withdrawn on top of that. So the interest.
And these fees are not cheap.
Yes. And so these are fees that are based on the benefit base that the income is based on, but it's assessed against the account value. Mm-hmm. So it's a disproportionate amount.
That benefit base does not go down, by the way.
Correct.
Whereas the value of the annuity does go down as you're taking money out.
So the charges are based on the value of the benefit base, but they're taken against the account value. So from a percentage standpoint, in theory, you would say, okay, well, the cost of this living benefit rider is 1%.
Right.
Well, that 1% is being taken against something that's higher than what it's actually being drawn against. So it's actually, in effect, more than 1% that you're actually paying.
Right. Okay, so now, number two. The other annuity, once again, we're out of penalty phase. Last year, an advisor that she had chosen to work with said, oh, we're going to do what's called a 1035 exchange. We're going to take the money out of the annuity. We're going to put it into another annuity, and it's not going to be a tax implication for doing that. Now, right? There will be. So now this has been a year ago. We've got 9 more years before this one's eligible, and she turned the income on that one as well, right? So now we have 2 income streams every single year that we don't need. We should be able to take it out just in lump sums as needed. That would be far more efficient. And it was at that point in time that the adult children said, I wish we'd have gotten involved earlier. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't disagree, but if you had gotten involved earlier, would you have gotten the right kind of professional help, or would you simply have looked over mom's shoulder a little bit more? I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but here's where it gets really bad. Both of these annuities have long-term care riders built into them. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why she likes this, right? Okay, so the concern would be, because she's up there in years, that if we need long-term care, unlike the last one that I was telling about, there is something that we can use to pay for it. Okay, here's the problem. Number one, you're beating down that annuity value in both of these cases. So the base with which you use for long-term care is not there as much as you think it was. It's not based on that base number that you were talking about, and that's where the fees and the income based on. It's based on the value of the annuity. And they said, well, these have got long-term care riders on them. I said, I don't see it. Okay, well, let me show you where it is. So they pulled out a document, and this was a proposal from the advisor. Hey, here's the 2 annuities. Here's what they have, and it had 2 different columns. Here's where you are. Here's what we're proposing. And on the proposal, it did show that there was going to be long-term care riders on there. I can't find that in the contract. And they said, well, no, it says it right there. And I said, that's a proposal. That's not the contract. And what I'm afraid has happened here is you believed what you were told, and you didn't check. You didn't get a second opinion. You didn't have anybody look over your shoulder, and you signed that contract, and you've got a 14-day period to change your mind. Well, that's long past. And now you've got this annuity. You're destroying the value of it because you're taking value or income that you don't need. Yeah. And there is no long-term care rider. So what you thought you had is not what you've got. And we're far enough into the game, I don't know that we can do much about it that's actually going to improve the situation.
Well, because you said she moved into another annuity just a couple of years ago, last year.
Just last year, right.
And what was the term on that?
10 years. So she's got 9 years before we can get out with 0 penalties.
And how old was she?
She is in her late 70s.
So that's another discussion about
exactly
suitability and appropriateness, right? But yeah, it's you're a target.
Yeah,
you're
are.
A target.
Now, once again, this is a educated, very intelligent woman, and she's not in her dotage. Upstairs, she's still clicking on all cylinders. But that doesn't mean that you can't be taken advantage of by somebody, or not even taken advantage of. Doing what they think is best for you without truly understanding all the different implications to your personal situation.
Well, once again, going back to the theme, you're trying to solve a problem, mm-hmm. and you're so focused on that one individual problem that you're trying to solve that you are creating new ones.
Right, and not realizing it.
And not even realizing it because you don't understand the true ramifications of the solution that you were implementing for the problem that you were trying to solve.
Yeah.
So,
all right, I know you've got at least 1, maybe 2 more stories. Let's stop for a minute. I'm a little just... all these stories kind of beat on me a little bit. Let's talk about bourbon. So you've had a little bit. You cut it with a little bit of water. What do you think?
It actually became more flavorful.
Yes,
when I cut it.
Not more flavors, but the caramel. Man, this is like a Werther's original caramel. If you remember those, mm-hmm. That's what that tastes like. Which that's a good thing, by the way. It's a mouthful of caramel. It's
a little bit of coating,
got a little bit of burn on the way down. Very pleasant.
I wouldn't even call it burn.
I think that's that charcoal that's in there. Yeah. It's just a warm, pleasant feeling. This has got to be fantastic on a late fall evening when it's starting to get a little cool outside, or maybe even in the winter. It feels a little colder today, but it's still very much summertime weather outside for the most part. But that's going to be awesome come wintertime.
Yeah, no, this is a good pour.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you put a couple drops in it, it enhanced the flavors a little bit.
Yes, it did.
So yeah, it's a good pour.
Fantastic. And once again, you can find this. I got it at Liquor Barn, but I've seen it at most of the Kroger's. Wine and Spirits will have them in this area. Evergreen's another big one. They always have it. Total Wine and More, they're always going to. This is a common one with the stores here in this area.
Well, see, I get more excited about these than I do like the Colonel Taylors and the Blantons and the Wellers. And
those are fun.
Those are great. Don't misunderstand.
But it's cool that I can go get this anytime I want.
Yeah.
And okay, full disclosure, I knew I wanted to pick this one up for this pod. The first place I went into, they didn't have any. And I said, I was looking for, Ezra Brooks Cast Strength. And he said, we've got some in. We just haven't put it back out on the shelf yet. And they were clearly reorganizing at that moment. It's like, that's fine. I'll run up the street. And boom, found it the very first place that I went to after that.
We said Liquor Barn. Which one?
I got this at the Liquor Barn that's out Middletown Commons.
Yep, okay.
Out by the Gene Snyder on Shelbyville Road. Once again, very easy to find in this area. And $52.99 was what I paid for it. I looked it up on an app where you can track this kind of stuff, and the suggested retail is $54.99. So this is, you're not going to spend more than $55-$60 on this ever.
Well, that's kind of my
that's your sweet spot.
That's kind of my limit. Yeah, that's kind of my limit. It's hard for me to go over $55 for a bottle of bourbon, just because I know things like this exist at that price point.
Exactly.
And you're not going to get much better relative to what you have to pay.
Yeah.
So.
And once again, this is simple. This is not an extremely complex bourbon where you're going to pull out all these wonderful different flavors.
That need to be.
And I think it's a good thing.
They need to be.
Sometimes simple is good, right? They call that elegant for a reason.
Well, yeah, we talk about that a lot in our business, right?
That kind of leads back into maybe your next story, right?
Well, to some degree, yeah. So this was a story, met with this client recently, or prospect, I should say. She's becoming a client. She actually brought her son in with her, and her son is similar to the story that you just told. Her son had mentioned where you talked about the son that you met with was saying that he'd wish he'd gotten involved a little bit earlier.
Right.
That's what was happening with her son now.
Yeah.
And actually, he mentioned virtually the exact same thing throughout the course of our meeting together, with the mom sitting there, because the mom was a little bit disorganized and she didn't quite know where everything was, where all the bodies were buried, so to speak. Right. So she knew I've got an account over here, but I don't really know what kind of account it is. I'm like, do you have a statement? No. What's that? And I'm like, well, get in the mail. So she was a little confused, right?
Geographic, not distribution. I've completely lost my mind there. So let's throw that one out.
So, but small town, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's common.
She's from Louisville Metro, but she's outside of Louisville, right? So, but wonderfully nice lady, and her son was a great guy too. Seemed like a great guy, and we're going to work together, and we'll be able to help this lady quite a bit actually.
Good.
So that'll be fantastic. But yeah, one of the things that we saw was she had several different burial life insurance policies.
Oh wow.
And
wow.
And
okay.
so we need to unwind some of that stuff. But it's interesting whenever you have conversations with older clients around the purpose of insurance. Like why do you have this insurance? Because there's usually a reason, and the reason that you need insurance is this is for 99% of people out there, right? So if you're in that 1%, this doesn't include you, right? But that 1% is including ultra high net worth and business owners that are worried about succession planning, and that's a very, very small minority of the overall general public that actually needs insurance well into your retirement, right? But she had been sold a couple burial policies, and they're sold as burial policies. They're really just small life insurance policies is all that they are. They're just made
you also
up.
hear them called final expense
policy.
Same thing.
I'm just using it. It was a final expense, so the same thing. Yeah, she had referred to it as burial policy, so that's what I was referring to. Referring to it as.
I'm rubbing off now.
Yes,
you can't talk.
Bourbon. I haven't had that much bourbon. I haven't even finished my first pour. But no. So anyway, we were going through and walking through her burial policy. So she had one. It was a $20,000 policy, but the cash.
That's fairly common, yeah.
Yeah, but she was paying at her age, and when she's on a fixed income, she has Social Security, and she's basically living off Social Security. Well, out of her Social Security, she's paying for this. It's like $75, $80 a month for a burial policy that she really doesn't even need. And it's like, what's the? And I asked her, like, what's the purpose of this? And she said, well, I mean, it's a burial policy. I said, what are your plans? She said, well, actually, I'm going to get cremated. Well, okay, we probably don't need
You don't need $20,000.
The expenses are quite a bit lower then. But she said, what's for my kids? And I'm like, well, okay, but you're also paying $75 a month. It was like $833 a year, something like that.
Golly.
In premium for this policy that's coming out of her fixed income that she could be using to live.
Right.
Okay, so we're kind of going back and forth around the pluses and the minuses of still having an insurance policy, but most people don't truly understand the reason you have insurance is to create an estate.
Mm-hmm.
If you already have an estate and you don't have anybody that's relying on you for your income, and her husband she was a widow, her husband had already passed. There was nobody that was going to rely on her income when she passed, right? So there was no need for insurance.
Right.
And so we kind of walk through that. It's always interesting because you can just see the light bulbs go off when you have those conversations around the purpose of money and the purpose of different types of accounts and why you really need them. Well, then we come to find out that she mentioned another policy that she had, and she did not have a statement for this one. And and I won't say the company's name, but she mentioned this other policy, and I'm like, well, I don't see a statement. What is that? I don't see a statement for that. So it was another policy.
Another burial policy.
Yeah, another final expense policy. I think it was for like $6,000. And I said, well, you already have this one. Why did you need that one? I was like, well, they called me and it sounded good. And, they came out to my house and originally I got $2,000, but they ended up increasing it to, $5,000 or $6,000. And I'm like, well, okay, well, what, do you know the cost on that? And she's like, yeah, I don't remember exactly. And so we kind of pulled out a bank statement and found she was paying another $50.
Oh gosh. Every month, right?
Every month. Every month. So she was paying $120 on a fixed income for 2 insurance policies, for 2 final expense policies that altogether were really not much from a death benefit amount. It was not very significant at all. So
let me pause you for a second. Just anybody that's listening, if you don't know what a burial or a final expense policy is, I don't care what you call it. These are whole life policies. Mm-hmm. They are for fairly small death benefits. They are very expensive, and here's why. They are typically sold to people who are approaching that final phase of life anyway. And medically, they would probably not qualify for a normal whole life policy if that's something that would be appropriate. So they typically have little to no underwriting because it's a fairly small death benefit. And people pay into these things, and the insurance companies make a killing. And when somebody's calling you cold on the phone, and then they're coming out to your house, and they're being such a nice guy, there's a reason for that. It's because the commissions on these are really nice. And there's no responsibility to the agent after it's sold.
None.
They move on. They have no legal, I would argue they have a moral responsibility, but there's nothing that holds them accountable after the fact. And that's quite honestly why there's so many people out there pushing them.
Well, I did make a comment. I said, if you got a salesman that found you by cold calling you and is coming out to your house to have you sign a policy, that's generally not someone you probably want to work with. Just as a rule, but I'll just throw that out there. But this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. She was being targeted.
Yep.
And she admitted, and her son admitted up front, that she was very financially illiterate. We went into her back. I'm not going to get into her background, but she did not grow up financially literate in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
She did not know what she was doing. She was preyed upon. Her son felt bad because he was very much saying, okay, I should have been involved in this far sooner than he was. And the damage is not irreparable, right? And so, and she has,
we can unwind this.
She has a couple other assets, and we'll be able to do a few things, and we'll be able to help her. She owns her house free and clear, right? So this isn't a sad story necessarily, but part of this is a cautionary tale to the point that you were making. When you get to a certain age, you are a target. Yep. And everyone laughs at those Nigerian emails,
the Nigerian prince,
right? The Nigerian prince, where I have $1 million that I'm trying to embezzle into the United States, and can you give me your account number so I can send it to you? And everyone laughs at those because who would fall for that?
Somebody did.
It only takes one.
That's right.
These final expense policies exist for a reason because people buy them.
Yep.
And they're preyed upon. They prey on your emotions, and they preyed upon. Make sure you have money to pay for this. And I even told them, I said, well, if paying for your final expenses is a concern, you can just go prepay. Go to the funeral home and prepay those expenses. You don't need to pay all this money. Because, by the way, because they had statements for the last several years, half of her premium every year was being eaten up in insurance costs.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't even being applied to the cash value. Mm-hmm. So she was just losing half of her premium every year. So you wonder talk about the commissions, right? And for the people that sell these things, it's a few bucks.
Yeah.
And so,
not a lot of work.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important to be aware and to be mindful of, who's contacting you and their intentions when they are contacting you and the types of things that you are being sold. And we've talked about this a lot. A lot of the mistakes aren't even necessarily the products you buy. It's also related to the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks just because someone works in finance, for those listening on podcasts, I'm absolutely using my air quotes. Not everybody in finance is created equal. And so the type of advisor that you work with can differ dramatically as far as your experience and the outcomes that you experience. You can have dramatically different outcomes.
And that was our pod last week, so please go back and listen to that one.
Yeah, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but you have to be very, very mindful of who it is that you're working with. And someone that's cold calling you out of the blue, or someone that, maybe doing a door knock. I have heard situations where people are still knocking on doors, amazingly enough.
Yep.
It's also worth noting this happens more in small towns than it does in cities. So just something else to be aware of. But you just have to be very, very mindful of who you're working with and what it is you're being sold. And if you start getting to a point where you're not 100% sure about what you're doing, or you think if anything might be off, please involve your kids and please go get a second, third, fourth opinion.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll add to that. I've had many older clients over the years that have said, would it be okay if my daughter or if my son came with me? Absolutely, it's okay. I would love for them to be here.
If we're doing things above board, we welcome it.
Correct. And that was kind of the point that I was going to. If you're working with a professional and you say, is it okay if I sit in with my mom or with my dad? Or is it okay if I have my son or my daughter or the whole family if you want to? I've done those. I know you have too. Sit in with us and go over this stuff. If that advisor says, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable, or if they hesitate, that's a huge red flag. I love having meetings with the whole family. Quite honestly, usually when I'm dealing with that adult child, they help me explain things to the parent in a way that I wouldn't have thought to explain it. But now the parent gets the concept, and it's actually makes it easier on us. So if you're above board, you're not going to have any problem with having multiple family members in those meetings. So by all means, tell people I want my daughter in there. I want my son in there with me.
And another thing to add, I don't want to put all the onus on necessarily the older clients, but if you are a son or a daughter of an aging parent, be proactive yourself and try to insert yourself to as much as you possibly can, to whatever degree that you can, but try to start asking some questions, start to sniff around and figure out, what are the things that my parents are doing? Where are their, accounts located? What types of accounts? Just try to make yourself maybe a little bit more informed so you can be an additional resource and making sure that you're available to help and answer questions and maybe help to ward off some of these, predatory
that's the right word.
Predatory salesmen that are out there, because there's a ton of them, right?
There are, and even when there's no ill will by any advisor along the way, you should still get involved with that aging parent, because it's amazing how disorganized some of their things are. And we've got lots of stories. I can think of one right off the top of my head. I started working with mom. And mom passed away not too long after that. It took us over a year just to figure out where everything was, because there were multiple brokerage houses, there were multiple banks in multiple cities involved, and they didn't know where everything was. And it was a nightmare to find it all, and a lot of expense happened to get that as well. So, follow up with what you're saying. If you've got an aging parent and you don't know what's going on, kind of put yourself in there. Don't go in with a sledgehammer. Go in gently as needed. Every parent's a little bit different, but you need to be involved in that so that the predatory people are not taking advantage of them, and so that when they are gone, you don't have a true nightmare just trying to figure out where everything is.
I'll even add this too, and this we can wrap up after
All right.
this. But we see this a ton. We see this a lot with widows that their husband always handled everything. Their husband was a DIYer.
Mm-hmm.
God bless them, right? But they're gone now. This is another reason why it's important to work with someone, because someone else can have a lot of that stuff kind of organized in one place collectively, so you know where everything is at. So we've had so many widows that we never met their husbands because the widows come into the office and they're so confused about where everything is and what they have and things that they don't even know what they have.
Yeah.
And to your point, it can take some time to unwind some of these things. Whereas, you never make the comment, but once again, going back to the statement I made earlier, if you were in the office 5-10 years ago, this would be a totally different story right now.
Exactly right.
So
all right, let's wrap that up. Ezra Brooks, cask strength. Now there's one, it's got a 99 on it. That's the regular. It's 99 proof. One thing I did notice, I want to make a comment. First of all, I would buy this again in a heartbeat. I have before.
It's great bourbon.
I think now you've found one that you'd be willing to buy pretty much any time. One thing that I did notice, we both commented, that this is not as hot as that 120 proof would suggest. But I'm looking at the amount of water that we have left in our glasses, and both of us have drank more water during one pour than what we normally would. So I would advise you to be a little bit cautious with this one because it might sneak up on you. Yeah. It's really, really good, but this is a good pour, like I was saying, for a kind of a nippy night, late fall when you're already at home. Okay. So I'll leave it on that.
Be cautious whenever you're drinking.
Be cautious whenever. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All that being said, thanks for enjoying another episode of Retirement Planning Happy Hour. We will see you next time.